Everyone. My name is Jillian Blankenship, and I have Julie Ishak here with me, the Chief Nurse Executive for Michigan Medicine. I am currently pursuing my master's degree in nursing through the University of Michigan's Leadership, Analytics, and Innovations program. I've also been a staff nurse at U of M for the past 6 years. As part of my leadership clinical immersion, I've had the privilege of working alongside Julie. Through this experience, Julie and I have identified a pretty meaningful gap in the relationship between staff nurses and executive leadership, with nearly 7,000 nurses across the U of M health system. Fostering visibility and trust between frontline staff and leadership can be a pretty significant challenge, but it is one that we are both passionate about addressing. So this interview that I'm doing with Julie today was just designed to offer insight into Julie's leadership style and the work she does to stay engaged with nursing staff. By sharing it with all of you, I hope to strengthen the connection between leadership and the bedside and to spark further conversations about how we can build a more unified and supportive nursing environment. So I would just like to start, Julie, by asking you if you could first share a little bit about your journey to becoming the CNE.
Yeah, thank you, Jillian. I am very, very excited to be doing this with you. I think you and I have had a lot of conversations, and I will say that even just getting your request to do your immersion with me was exciting because I don't get a lot of those requests anymore. And I really value the opportunity. And I was even more excited when I learned that you were a staff nurse. So, because I do want to be able to have that closer connection with our team. So, my journey to the role of Chief Nurse Executive has been a very long one. I will say one that if you had asked me 20 some years ago if I ever would go into leadership or if I ever envisioned being in a role like this, the answer would have been a hard no. I graduated nursing school in 1999, so I've been a nurse, gosh, now for 26 years. And I very quickly knew when I graduated nursing school that I was very passionate about women's health. I wanted to be a labor and delivery nurse. I did my obligatory 2 years in med surg and then moved into the world of labor and delivery, mother baby. And I absolutely love it. And I worked the preponderance of my clinical nursing experience as a registered nurse has been in labor and delivery and in women's health. And then while I was working as a labor and delivery nurse, this was in the early 2000s. So there was not a lot of nurse practitioners out there at the time. I really felt like I either wanted to go into being a midwife or I wanted to become a nurse practitioner. There weren't, it didn't feel like there were a lot of positions available for midwives. So at the time I chose women's health and I chose a primary care track thinking that I would probably specialize in women's health. And so I went back to Wayne State University and became a board certified nurse practitioner in 2004. And it just so happened that the role that I landed on when I graduated from NP school was in internal medicine. It was at what is now considered Corewell, but at the time it was Royal Oak Beaumont. And I worked as a nurse practitioner on a hospital medicine service. And that was really, really good learning. It wasn't exactly what I thought I would do. It wasn't the women's health kind of clinic work I thought I would do. But at the time, it was hard to get a nurse practitioner job back then. So I went with a group of docs that I had worked closely with when I was working at the former Beaumont. And I worked as a nurse practitioner for many years and I really loved it. But and at that time I was teaching. I was teaching for Oakland University and Oakland Community College. I was an adjunct clinical director and I would take students to various hospitals and I did the advanced med surg clinical and nursing school. And I was at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, Michigan, doing a rotation there with my students from Oakland University. And at the time, the nursing director had approached me and asked whether or not I would be interested in applying to be the unit manager of that unit. It was an orthopedic unit at the main hospital. And that was really my first kind of thought about leadership. And so I did it. I started working as a nurse manager back in 2004, 2005. And I fell in love with leadership as a specialty. It was just something that I absolutely adored. I loved kind of taking care of the caregivers, and I loved being able to sort of influence decisions at a broader level. And so that's really what, kind of drew me into leadership. And from that point on, I've just every 4 or 5 years, I've kind of grown in my leadership roles. I've, gone from being a nurse manager to then being a director over multiple units, to then being here an associate chief nursing officer, then a chief nursing officer. And then as of last year, after, 18, 19 years of leadership, both on the inpatient and outpatient side, I was put into the chief nurse executive role for Michigan Medicine. So it's been a really wild journey to get here, but one that I'm just thrilled about. I'm so excited. I never thought in a million years that I'd have a role like this, and I feel privileged in many, many ways to be sitting in this role. So it was just sort of a progressive path that led me here, and lots of good mentors and lots of opportunities. So I'm really grateful.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I think it's really good that you have that experience as a bedside nurse. You did that for many years. You know what it's like kind of on the other side of things. And I think that is really important to bring into the role that you have now. So, what is something that you wish staff nurses understood about your role now?
Um, oh, that is such a good question, because I know that when I was a staff nurse, I didn't really understand um, really even my own unit manager's role in many ways. I mean, let alone, I don't know that I even thought about what somebody in an executive nursing role did. But I guess what I wish people understood was that my job is to really advocate, lead, and represent the almost 7,000 nurses that are in this organization. And so, and I take that very, very seriously. I mean, I think it's a large role. It's one that has a lot of responsibility, because I know that the decisions I make impact the nurses that I care very deeply about. And so I think if I wanted someone to understand what the role is that I do, I would say look at it as a role that really oversees the strategic vision for the nursing community at Michigan Medicine. And so I think there's a lot of different levels of layership between a staff nurse and my role. And I would say that my role is really designed to lead nursing in a very strategic way in the organization. And so it's a role that represents nursing and really sets the vision for how we operate as a nursing community. And that seems a little elusive when I say it. There's a lot that goes into it, as you now know, having spent some time with me, but I'm having a lot of really kind of strategic discussions about the direction of nursing within the organization, how nursing can be best positioned in the organization, where we want to grow, expand, what our strategic priorities are, and how to best advocate for the teams at the local level.
And I think that's really important for us as nurses to know that we do have somebody advocating for us, that you are like a voice for us. So thank you for that. And what are some ways right now that you stay connected to what's happening on the units? I know there's so many sites, you can't be in a million places at once. You can't go see and talk to everybody, but what do you do to kind of stay connected to each individual unit?
Yeah, that has been probably the most difficult part of this role, is that it is such a high priority for me, and I know it is a desire of the nursing teams. I remember when I was interviewing for this role, um, people would say, we want to see the CNE. We want to see you out on the units. We want you to understand the work that we're doing. And that's a fair, and that is something that, I need to understand to do the role that I'm in. And I was always someone who felt visibility was really important. It has been difficult because you could round and round and round and round, and you would still never get to you. There's still people, of course, I'll never meet, or units that, maybe I'll visit once every couple of months. And then there's units that I'm up there all the time for various reasons. For me, it's been intentional rounding. and not rounding to go get information, but literally walking around. You'll see me kind of just walking around the health system, going up on the units. Just whenever I have a break, I get up and I start walking, and that's been helpful for me on the inpatient side. It's been far more difficult as I now realize to get right, because what's much more difficult is to get up, get in my car, and go somewhere. And so it's been a challenge to make it to our ambulatory sites, but there's no right answer. It's just trying to be as visible as often as possible has been the way that I've addressed that. Now, recognizing that, again, I could round all day, every day, and I would never get to all of our sites and I'd never meet all of our team members. I am really responsive via email. When I get an email, and I get many from our frontline nurses, I write them right back and I have dialogue with them. I've met with many of our frontline nurses who've said, "Hey, can I come to your office and can we have a talk about A, B, C, and D?" Either people, many times it's nurses who are interested in leadership and want to have a discussion about what that looks like. Many times it's nurses who want to talk to me about what's happening on their unit. I'm always open to that. My nursing newsletter every month, I try to make that as pertinent as possible to the teams and try to make it about the teams. Videos, it's like 8 different times, 8 different ways. I mean, there's no one way to communicate with the teams, but my goal is to be as visible as possible, as often as I can throughout the day. And to know that even if you don't see me, that I am accessible and reachable, and always available to our nursing teams.
And I would encourage other nurses to reach out to you and email you if they want to get to know you better or understand your role a little bit better. Because just talking to you has been the best way to kind of learn. And I've learned that you're pretty easy to talk to. You're an honest communicator. I can ask you lots of things, and I know you're going to tell me an honest answer. So I've appreciated that. So I do encourage everybody to kind of reach out if they do want to get to know you a little bit better. Right now, currently, how do you gather feedback from bedside nurses?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of different ways, right? I mean, I go out there and ask them, so directly from them, both in town hall formats while I'm rounding, via email. I meet with their leadership often, right? So while the individuals that I meet most often with are the nursing leaders, and they are very, very passionate about getting their nurses' feedback to me. So I will say that your leaders are often sharing the perspective of the nurses on the unit. And so I get a lot of feedback from the leaders of the units. I look at engagement scores, I look at risk reports. These are all ways that you hear what is happening on the unit. And so there are many different ways that people are communicating what's happening out on the floors, their perspectives. I talk to other disciplinary team members that I work with, our chief quality officer, our chief medical officer. There's just, I get the feedback in many, many different ways, inclusive of all those channels. And so I would say directly from our teams, as well as from the leadership that are managing our teams, I would say are the two biggest ways that I'm hearing from our nurses. And of course, our union partners, right? Like I hear their perspective and I hear what they're being told from our nursing teams. And I really value that feedback and talk frequently with our union partners about what they're seeing and what they're observing and how we have shared accountability and responsibility for that. And so I also listen to our union partners around what they're hearing. So lots of different people, lots of different channels, lots of different ways to get the information.
And that kind of leads me into one question that I was going to ask you too. If you could describe a little bit more um, to people your relationship with the union, because I know from working with you now that you do try to have a pretty good relationship with them. I've gone on rounds with you guys and all that, but if you could kind of tell everybody else how you have been working with the union.
Yeah, I mean, I started in March of 2020. I've always had what I would describe as really positive relationships with our union partners in all of the roles I've served here as the Associate Chief Nursing Officer, as the Chief Nursing Officer of Ambulatory Care, and now in this role. And it's because I respect and understand their role within the organization. I see that they care about the same things I care about. I mean, I think the difference is I don't really view it that we're not advocating for the same people. I think we are advocating for the same individuals. We care about nursing. Um, I very much have a great deal of respect for our union leadership. I think they have, um, just from my perspective, they've been very collaborative, respectful. They share the opinions and thoughts of our nurses. I value that. And, we have what I think is really good dialogue. We don't always agree on things. We don't always come to a conclusion that everybody loves, but I find it to be really respectful. I value their perspective. And I think at the end of the day, our goals are no different. My goal is to support our nurses. My goal is to make sure our patients are receiving high quality care. I take that responsibility really seriously, and I view our union partners as individuals who can help me accomplish that.
Good. And I know that we touched a little bit on this already with discussing visibility and the kind of challenges behind that. But what do you think are the biggest barriers to strong relationships between bedside nursing and nursing leadership?
Yeah, I mean, so I think like the I think there's always I think that probably the biggest barrier or the biggest disconnect is that this sort of feeling. I'm sure I know it for our nursing leaders, for example. Many of our nursing leaders that are unit leaders, right? They often feel very caught in the middle. I remember that. I remember feeling a bit caught in the middle, like trying to sort of meet the needs of all of their team members, which is hard to do, but also trying to be successful at their role, which is to really look not only at their unit, but looking at healthcare as a whole. And I think the truth of the matter is, like, if we could all just have endless resources and endless, investments in nursing, I would be the first person to say, like, absolutely, we should do that, right? We were all nurses in leadership. We were all nurses at one point. And I think where the disconnect is that I think sometimes it probably feels to the staff nurse like I'm out here just, busting my tail every single day. And what are you doing to advocate on my behalf? I think where we can really make headway is to have honest and transparent discussions about the challenges we face, because as leaders, you are being charged and responsible for looking at the good of the whole organization. So when I make a decision, I make it for all 7,000 nurses. I make it for the best decision I can make for the organization as a whole. That may not feel like the best decision for you, Jillian, on your unit, right? And I think that's where the disconnect is. So I think the more that we can build trusting relationships, the more I can be honest and transparent with all of you around what it is that I'm facing as a leader, that I have decision points to make as a leader. It will feel like we are in it together as opposed to opposing sides, right? I mean, it all comes down to trust, and it all comes down to having those relationships between leadership and between those providing care. But I mean, there are some tough decisions. This is a really, really complicated landscape that we're managing through right now. And so it's like the nurse in me, of course, wants to give everything I can to nursing and to recognize in a million different ways and to give you the best staffing that's possible out there. And yet there's all these sort of systematic headwinds that we face that I have to take into consideration as a leader, both for the financial health of the organization. And so that's probably where, there's probably the biggest disconnect. But I see that can be solved through transparent discussions, through explanations on both sides, and through trusting relationships.
I agree. I think that trust is one of the biggest aspects when it comes to a positive relationship.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you acknowledging that. When you were a bedside nurse, was there ever a time that you felt disconnected from leadership?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have examples of leaders that I absolutely adored, and I have examples of leaders that I felt really disconnected from. And that's true no matter what role you're in. Like that doesn't go away, right? Like I think that the leaders that I adored were leaders that I could tell cared, um, that were trying to do the best they could with the resources they had. But those leaders that I trusted the most are those leaders that I really felt cared about me as a person. They couldn't always, we didn't always agree on the right path. They couldn't always give me what I wanted. We were often short staffed and it was often rough. Um, but the leaders that I connected with the most were those that really kind of made an authentic connection with me as a person, as a nurse. And those that I didn't were those that I felt weren't very transparent or didn't really care about me as an individual and didn't get to know me as a person. And so I think those basic principles of leadership exist no matter what role you're in. I feel very fortunate right now to have a leader that I, think supports me, cares about nursing, advocates for nursing, and that alone, to have that kind of relationship with your leader, um, makes you trust them even when the decisions that they make you may not necessarily understand, and that's always going to happen in a leadership role. You're always going to be making decisions to the best of your ability, but when you have trust, all of that kind of falls into place because you assume best intent. And so those are, I have had for sure. I've had leaders that I felt disconnected with as a staff nurse, and I've had leaders I felt disconnected with in leadership positions. So it doesn't go away. In fact, probably becomes a little harder because you have some pretty strong expectations of your leaders as they continue to grow in their leadership positions.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And what would you say to nurses right now who really want to get more involved in hospital wide decision making or improvement initiatives? Like, what opportunities exist for them? How can we have a voice in those kind of things?
Yeah, I think institutionally we need to do a better job of making those opportunities really well known. I don't know how many times, Jillian, you've sat in a meeting with me and you've said, "Well, I didn't even realize that we had this," or "I didn't even realize this existed," or and kind of like your journey in becoming the UBC chair. And there are a million different ways to get involved. There's formal leadership positions that you can pursue. There's informal leadership positions. There's committee positions. There's positions within philanthropy and within nursing practice governance. And um, there's a million different ways to get involved. I think we need to do a better job of making sure that those opportunities are really visible to our nurses. And then I think like one really important thing that our nurses should do, should they want to get involved, is to make their intent to get involved really well known. The last 2 years I've been in this role, that we've had poster day, which is always like, I think poster day and Nurses Week is always such a fun week. It's a week I get to meet a lot of the nurses and see the work they do. But poster week is when you have all of our nurses who are doing amazing work on their units come and present their work during poster day. And there have been, at least 10 to 12 nurses I've met that said, I have a real interest in A, B, C, or D. And I take their name and I think of them when something comes up, and I'll reach out to them and say, "Hey, I met you at poster day. You said you had an interest in this. Like, would you be interested in joining this committee?" And I would encourage you to go to your nursing leadership, your clinical nurse specialists, your educators, anybody on your unit, and make your desires known so that when those opportunities come up, your name will naturally come to mind as somebody that we should tap into. So lots of different opportunities here. This organization has many, many opportunities. We just have to do a better job of communicating it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's so many resources available to us, and just in the past year, I've learned about so many of them that I didn't know existed. Um, so I encourage other nurses to kind of do a little bit of research, figure out what resources are out there because there are resources that can help you.
Yeah,
And I would encourage everybody to like take initiative. Like you said, if you really are passionate about something or want to see a change, um, nothing's going to happen if you don't say anything or take action. So, uh,
absolutely.
yeah. And then just for fun, could you share like a little fun or interesting fact about yourself? Is there anything that we would be surprised to know?
Hmm. God, I was just telling my husband, like, I need more hobbies. I'm like such a, uh, well, let's see. I don't know if this is not fun or interesting, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Like, I am married. I've been married for 25 years almost. I married my high school sweetheart. And so we've been married now going on 25 years. I have 3 kids. I have a daughter who's a Spartan. So I have a lot of, half my closet is blue and yellow, and the other is green and white. So I'm really proud of her. She's pre law at Michigan State. And I have a son who is going into his senior year of high school. And then I have a pretty large age gap. So I have a 10-year-old, so she's going into 5th grade. And so I feel really fortunate to be in this role and still be able to do what I think is my most important mission in this world, which is to be a mother. Um, let's see. I have nothing interesting about me, Jillian. I'm like that boring. Like there'll be nothing that you find on me that's interesting. Or, I mean, I love to read. I'm currently getting my DNP, so that has really put my like casual reading aside. Um, but I'll be finishing in December, which is exciting. Um, let's see. I ride a scooter, like I ride a Vespa. That's the most interesting thing about me. I roam around the Royal Oak area in a teal Vespa, and one day I hope to like make it to a full-blown motorcycle. So I really like my Vespa. That's all that's interesting about me. I
Well,
mean,
that is interesting. Picturing you on a
yeah, I'll
motorcycle
have to show you. I'll have to show you a picture next time you're with me.
was a funny image. But no, I
Yeah,
appreciate
it's
that.
a
I
cute
think
little Vespa.
just on a personal level too, being a working mom myself, working full time, being in school full time, managing a household, a husband, children. I know how hard that can be, and I've seen how busy you are. I've spent days with you, Julie, and I'm like, do you eat lunch? When do you take a break? Like, when do you go to the bathroom? Because it seems like you're always go, go, go. So I really eh, commend you for that, because that's something I think a lot of us can relate to. Sometimes we do this job and we forget people have whole lives outside of this. So I think it is important for us to kind of know that about you too, to know that you're not just Julie Ishak, the CNE at Michigan Medicine. There's a lot of different sides to you too. So I really I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking this time to meet with me. I hope that going forward, this is something we can keep working on. Just throughout the institution, kind of like strengthening this relationship. I encourage people to reach out to you or me if they have any ideas on things we can do to kind of um, bridge that gap a little bit. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jillian. I mean, thank you for wanting to do your clinical immersion with me. Thank you for being a really good, it's been really fantastic to get to know you better and to really understand your perspective as a staff nurse, but to also show you what this role is. It's kind of exciting and feels like something that I don't get to do that often. And I would just say, thank you for choosing this as a topic to discuss. It's something that's always top of mind for me. Like, I want the nurses at U of M to know that while I don't know all 7,000 of you and you don't know me, um, I care so deeply about each one of you, and I care so deeply about our patients and what's best for our patients. And every day I try to show up and do what's best for our patients, for our team members, and that will be done imperfect many, many times. And I'm open to hearing that. And so I just really want our teams to help me lead. I don't believe that I have all the answers. I don't believe I have some like crazy insane skill set that makes me but I care and I'll listen and I only want what's best for nursing. And so I would love to see more engagement from our nursing teams to help me lead this organization, because I think I would be very open to it, and it would be in everyone's best interest to have that shared collaboration.
Yeah, it sounds like we all have kind of the same mutual goals. It's not a us against them kind of thing. We're all in this for the same reasons.
That's right.
So just kind of remembering that and getting back to the basics, that it's really all about quality patient care, and the nurses. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so thank you, Julie, and I
Thank you,
will
Julian.
see you soon. And I
Okay.
encourage everyone, you see Julie in the hall, just stop her, say hi to her, have a quick chat with her.
I absolutely, and a lot of our nurses do. So I appreciate those that do stop and talk to me, and please do. I love it when that happens. Thank you, Jillian, for the interview today.
Yes, thank you, Julie.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.